It was supposed to be my birthday. 25, a milestone. I told myself I shouldn't expect anything. Years of being the forgotten one had taught me better, but some small part of me still hoped. I dressed in the same jeans I wore for everything, brushed my hair twice to make it look less tired, and walked into the kitchen that morning with a quiet wish in my heart. They were waiting. My parents, my sister, a couple of cousins who always tagged along for the cruelty, never the care. There were balloons taped to the ceiling, a cake box on the counter. My sister, Lindsay, grinned at me, her lipstick bright, her voice sugary sweet. Happy birthday, loser. We actually have something planned for you this year. I blinked, confused. They had never planned anything for me, not once. For Lindsay, every birthday was a parade. Diamond earrings, spa days, parties that lit up the whole neighborhood. For me, a mop, a laugh, a forgotten day. But today, they seemed different, excited. Dad pulled out a strip of black cloth. "Put this on," he ordered, smirking. "We've got a surprise, you'll love it." I hesitated, but Mom clapped her hands. "Don't ruin the fun, Emma. It's your big day. Just do as you're told." Something in me tensed. Still, I let them tie the blindfold over my eyes. I told myself, maybe, just maybe, they were finally going to treat me like family. Maybe they had listened when I cried quietly last year after they forgot me again. The abandonment. The car ride was long, too long. I could feel the rough roads beneath the tires, hear the muffled snickers from the back seat. Lindsay whispered something to Mom, and they both laughed. Dad turned up the radio. I clutched my hands in my lap, heart pounding, forcing myself to believe this would be different. The car slowed, gravel crunched under the wheels. Then it stopped. The door yanked open and Dad's hand shoved me roughly out. I stumbled, nearly falling, the blindfold still wrapped around my eyes. "Okay," Mom said, her voice dripping with venom. "Here's your surprise." Someone untied the blindfold and sunlight stabbed my eyes. When my vision cleared, my stomach dropped. I wasn't in front of a party, not even in front of a house. I was standing in the middle of an open field, nothing but dry grass and the sound of wind around me. My family clustered by the car, grinning like wolves. Lindsay pointed at me, doubled over, laughing. "Best gift ever," she said between gasps. Not seeing her. Dad joined in, his laughter booming. "That's right. The best birthday gift is leaving you where you belong in the middle of nowhere. Trash doesn't need cake." Mom's voice cut sharp, final. "Don't bother coming home until you learn you'll never matter." And then with one last cruel smirk, they got back into the car. The engine roared, the tires spat dirt, and just like that, they drove away. The turning point. The silence afterward was deafening. I stood frozen in the middle of that field, the blindfold still dangling from my wrist, the echo of their laughter wrapping around me tighter than any rope. For a moment, I felt 13 again, abandoned all over, the world tilting beneath my feet. But then the silence shifted. The anger boiled. My lungs filled with a breath I didn't know I had left. If they thought leaving me in a field like garbage would break me, they had forgotten one thing. Garbage has a way of rotting everything it touches. And I had just decided it was my turn to rot their perfect world. The wind whipped across the empty field, stinging my face as I watched the dust trail of my family's car disappear. For a long time, I just stood there, my body heavy, my mind numb. 25 years old on my birthday, and I had been abandoned like a stray dog. I sank to my knees in the grass, clutching the blindfold they'd ripped from my face. The words, "Best gift is not seeing you," echoed in my skull. For a moment, I let myself cry deep, guttural sobs that clawed their way out of me. But then, just as quickly, the tears burned out, leaving something else behind. Rage. The long walk back. I staggered to my feet, dust clinging to my jeans, and looked around. No houses, no cars, just endless fields and a narrow dirt road. My phone was in my pocket, but the battery was low. No signal. I tried walking, my legs trembling, every step fueled by fury more than strength. Hours passed. My throat went dry, my skin sticky with sweat, but I kept moving. Eventually, headlights pierced the dusk. A pickup truck slowed beside me, and an older man rolled down the window. "You lost, miss," he asked, voice rough but kind. I swallowed my pride. I was left out here. Could you take me back into town? He nodded, and without another word, I climbed into the truck bed. The ride was bumpy, but it gave me time to think. By the time we hit the first street light of civilization, my decision was carved into me like stone. This wasn't going to end with me crying in a field. It was going to end with them choking on their own cruelty. The patient revenge. When I got home, the house was silent. They hadn't even noticed how long I was gone. Mom was probably sipping wine, Dad watching sports, Lindsay scrolling on her phone and bragging about how hilarious the field stunt had been. I didn't go inside. Not yet. Instead, I walked past the front door and headed straight to the library. I buried myself in research. Stories of families who betrayed their own, legal loopholes, community boards where gossip spread like wildfire. I started piecing together every dirty secret they'd hidden from the world. Dad had cut corners at work. Mom had lied about charity donations. Lindsay had bullied her way through school on their money. They thought they'd buried it all, but they hadn't counted on me digging. Days passed and I played the role they expected. Quiet, small, invisible. At meals, I said nothing as Lindsay flashed her new necklace, a gift Mom and Dad had bought her as if mocking me further. "See, Emma," Mom sneered one evening. "Some daughters are worth celebrating, others just worth leaving behind." I clenched my fork so hard the metal bent, but I didn't lash out, not yet, because the best revenge isn't loud, it's patient. I began documenting everything. I secretly photographed receipts, recorded conversations dripping with their venom, collected testimonies from people they'd wronged. At work, I stayed late, saving every extra penny. At night, I drew plans and notebooks under dim light. Every cruel word they'd thrown at me would become a weapon. One evening, Lindsay barged into my room without knocking, smirking. "Still sulking about your little birthday trip. Come on, sis, lighten up. It was just a joke." I stared at her until she shifted uncomfortably. "A joke," I whispered. "Do you know what it feels like to stand in an empty field listening to your family drive away, knowing they'd be happier if you stayed there forever?" She rolled her eyes. Drama queen. I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "No, Lindsay, just patient." She laughed, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. The reckoning. Weeks turned into months. On the outside, I was the same Emma they thought they could mock into silence. But inside, I was a storm. The night finally came, not by accident, but by design. My parents had decided to host one of their infamous family reputation dinners, inviting neighbors, colleagues, church leaders, and anyone else who might stroke their egos. The house gleamed with lights, laughter spilled onto the lawn, and Lindsay strutted around in a glittering red dress, telling everyone about her perfect family. To them, this night was about showing off. To me, it was the stage I'd been building for months. When the dining room filled with guests, I waited in the corner, silent. They didn't even acknowledge me. To them, I was the invisible daughter, the burden they could laugh off. Dad clinked his glass and stood at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming. We're so proud of our family. We've raised strong, smart children, and tonight we celebrate everything we've built." Mom beamed, soaking in the attention. Lindsay smirked, whispering something to the woman beside her that made them both laugh. That was my cue. I rose slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. All eyes turned. My parents stiffened, clearly annoyed that I dared to stand. "I'd like to say something," I said, my voice steady. Dad forced a chuckle. "Emma, this isn't the time for one of your moments." But I ignored him. I walked to the center of the room, pulled a folder from my bag, and laid the first document on the table. "Funny," I said softly, "how you claim to have raised me. Yet, here's a statement from a neighbor who fed me when you abandoned me at 13. They remember me knocking on their door, hungry, because you were gone." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mom's face drained of color. I pulled another sheet. "Here's an ambulance report. Remember that night I almost died? The paramedics documented everything. Word for word how you argued to take off my oxygen mask, saying I was useless." People muttered, shocked. A man in the back shook his head. Monsters. My parents fumbled for control. Mom stood, her smile cracking. She's twisting things, don't listen to her. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out the last set of photos. Pictures I'd taken of Lindsay's lavish birthday gifts, the diamond necklace, the spa weekends. Next to them, I placed a photo of me in that empty field, blindfold dangling from my hand, standing alone where they had dumped me on my 25th birthday. The room went silent. Guests stared in horror, their forks frozen midair. I looked directly at my parents. Best gift is not seeing me, right? Your words. But tonight, everyone sees you for who you really are. The aftermath. The silence broke into chaos. Whispers, disgusted glares, people rising from their chairs. One woman slammed her napkin down. I will never do business with you again. A man shook his head. Cruelty like this doesn't stay hidden. Mom swayed, grabbing the table for balance. Dad's face burned red, his mouth opening and closing as though he had words, but none came out. Lindsay's smirk vanished. She buried her face in her hands. And then I delivered the final blow. You left me in a field to rot. So here's my gift to you. I'm leaving you in this room, stripped bare in front of everyone you ever wanted to impress. Consider this the field you can never crawl out of. I turned and walked out. Behind me, the sound of chairs scraping, of guests abandoning the dinner, of my parents' desperate voices begging people to stay. It was sweeter than any applause. Outside, the air was cool, the stars wide and endless above. I smiled for the first time in years. They should be scared, because for once, I hadn't been the one blindfolded. I hadn't been the one left behind. I was the one who finally walked away, leaving them lost in their own field of shame. And I didn't need to look back to know they would never escape it.
Thanks for watching Past Quest. If you enjoyed the journey into history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories from the past. See you in the next quest.